What's up, everyone? My name is Paul, also known as Toasty Tilapia, and this is my first ever painting video. What we're looking at right now is kind of the finished product of everything I made in here in this video. And we have one GameCube controller. It's a Candy Pearl Red with a stencil on logo. And I also have two Xbox controllers, which are actually going to be gifts for my uncle for Christmas. And one of them, they're both color shifting pearls. One of them is the Arson, or not, sorry, not Arson. It's the Assassin Super Shift Pearl from Did Spade, who is basically who I use for all my like pearl pigments and like metal flakes and stuff. Um, and the other one is a white base pearl called Elevation. Also Super Shift, but yeah, that's the sort of like green to blue one, and that's the one you're looking at right now. These came out really well. There's like a little bit of, there's a tiny bit of orange peel in certain places, but it's like, I don't know, they look great other than that. And most people aren't even going to notice. And I might go back and sand and polish some of those areas, get them like absolutely perfect. But um, these are basically, you know, these came out really well. I'm pretty happy with them. So right now, we're going to jump into painting. I forgot to film the priming, like sanding, prepping, and like priming all the shells. So right here, they're all primed already, and we're gonna be mixing up some black base coat, and I use Tamco for all my solvent-based paints, pretty much. There's a distributor that's pretty close to me, and um, they're just really good quality paints, and they're not overly expensive for the quality you get, and they work well. I really don't have any complaints about them, other than maybe like the containers they come in, like this quart of black base coat. If you're kind of just pouring out like small quantities, man, these paint tins, they're a pain. Um, they're messy. You have to pound the hammer on. You have to pound the lid on every single time. You can't just like screw on a cap. And they're kind of annoying to pour out small quantities. But you know, you take what you can get. It is what it is. It's kind of par for the course. These are meant for these types of paints. They're meant for painting cars. They're like automotive paints. So like most people, they're not measuring out, you know, 50 milliliters at a time, or 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 milliliters of paint at a time. They're measuring out like, a liter and spraying a whole car. Um, so that's a little bit of why that is, but uh, you just got to deal with it as a controller painter. These are kind of like in my opinion, these are like the best paints you can use, like urethane solvent-based paints. The coverage is just so good. They're just so easy to work with, and albeit quite toxic. I mean, you really have to be on top of your PPE and your safety equipment while using this stuff. I have my respirator on anytime I have like these containers open or I'm anywhere near them, and wearing gloves. You don't want to get this on you or anything. So it's kind of pretty nasty stuff. Safety is very important. So I just mixed up some black base coat. Um, these Tamco paints, they reduce 1 to 1. So you have they're basically 50% of your paint, and then you put in 50% uh, urethane reducer, um, and then you strain it into your cup. You always want to strain your paints, always. There might be little particulates or something, or little clumps of paint or pigments in there, or stuff can, little lumps of stuff can be in there sometimes, And so you always want to strain your paint after you mix it, and while you're pouring it into your paint cup. Well, into your spray gun, I guess. Anyways, because any little solid particle that's a little too big gets into your spray gun, it can cause some issues. You might get a clog or something, and you really don't want that. It's not good. It's going to ruin your finish. You're gonna have to like take your gun apart, completely clean it out. Big process, total pain. Um, so, anyways, yeah, I'm using my Segola here. It's a Segola Mini Extreme. I have the EPA air cap, which is I guess it's the sort of like low volume, low pressure air cap. Um, that's the air cap most people are going to want to use with this gun. If you're doing stuff like I am here, and I got it with the 1 millimeter needle and nozzle combination, which is and I originally got this gun as to use as a clear coating gun, but I recently got DeVilbiss DB1, the smart repair version, which is just like it's fantastic for clear coating. It's super ergonomic, and the finish I'm getting with it is just unbelievably good, straight off the gun, which is something I had to work a lot harder for with this Segola. Even though the Segola is still a really nice gun, just like it's maybe just a tiny step below those real top quality guns, but the build quality is really good. It's just a little it's a little hard on my hand when I'm using it. It's just not quite. It doesn't fit my hand shape that well, but it's something you have to deal with sometimes. Um, but anyways, I'm using this as my base coat gun now, and I'm doing it at my settings that I generally use for pretty much everything. Um, for all my base coats and priming with this gun are uh, about 25 psi, and then I go about a turn and a half in on fluid. Usually, uh, you know, different paints can have some different consistencies, so you're gonna have to adjust uh, with that depending on what you're doing, the paint you're using, the weather conditions, all that. But and then I just go in a little bit, maybe like a quarter turn, or probably about a quarter turn on the fan, and it works really well. I'm getting just a really nice finish, really good atomization with this. My base coat's going on really well, and yeah, you can see this is my first time. This is my first time painting any sort of, or like painting an Xbox controller. Period. So I actually, and these have a couple pieces that like clip on with clips. There's like the back parts of the handles, and then there's also the battery cover. Um, and so I decided I was concerned with sort of longevity with those. I wanted to make sure everything fit together well, and that when you're putting on these, it's a wireless controller, so you're taking the battery cover on and off. Every time you have to change the battery, and you want this thing. These are nice paint jobs. Like these are put a lot of work into these. They're really, you know, good quality, and you really just want to make sure you do everything you can to make sure it lasts as long as possible. And I was a little concerned with if over time taking that battery cover on and off, if I didn't mask off that area, then especially because it's a high friction area, there's a lot of movement, you know plastic on plastic going on. I wanted to make sure to mask off all those areas that would have parts kind of moving on them, so that they wouldn't get damaged and the paint wouldn't chip over time. So yeah, I went ahead and did that on these. I'm not sure if that's something you really need to do. But I wouldn't did it anyways, just to be safe. It was a little extra work for sure, but yeah, it's what I went ahead and did for these. And yeah, so here I am. This is, I believe, this is my second, or no, this is just yeah, I'm just doing my black base coat here, and going pretty well. Just doing my first coat. These are a little awkward having these on these handle pieces all like closely packed on this stand. I only have like 8 of these like painting stands that I use for controllers. Um, and so I just didn't have any extras that I could use, and I was doing, I guess, 3 controllers, and I needed all 8 of those stands for to do all of these at once. So that's just kind of how it was, how it happened, how it looked out. Yeah, yeah, kind of that's just what it is. And you really want to, something I learned kind of throughout my painting journey is you really want to have these parts elevated. I got these sort of like turntables when I first started painting, and I was kind of having issues with dirt and stuff, like um, getting into the paint, uh, or because they were sitting right on a flat surface, and with these spray guns, you're blowing air like fairly 25, 30 psi of air at your thing, and it's going to dislodge whatever, if there's any like loose dirt, or as paint builds up, and maybe you'll get like little beads of paint on your surface. um, it'll get dislodged and it'll blow into your paint, and it's not good. Yeah, you don't want that, obviously. But so I eventually got these stands. They work really well. You just have to be sure to, sometimes you just have to be sure to tape your stands onto the bottom of certain controllers if the clips just aren't sitting like super securely, uh, just so they don't fall off while you're doing things. And also, just having these elevated makes it really easy to get into those little like crevices, in between the handles and things. I mean, you'll see coming up right here. I'll kind of go in from underneath and get in those spots so I don't hit um, other parts of the controller that already have paint on them with like too much paint. Because if you put on too thick of a coat, you're gonna have issues. You might have like some solvent pop or fish eyes, or your paint might run, and that's not good. You want to get the flattest finish possible. Um, or your paint might crack if it's you put on too wet of a coat. Yeah, so the general kind of process here, for these different paint jobs, where I'm doing the I'm doing candy pearl red, and then also 2 color shifting pearls. Um, and to do the candy pearl red, it's a really cool effect. Um, you'll see a lot of like Mazdas that use these candy pearl like paint jobs. Like uh, you'll see kind of like newer Mazdas that like newer red Mazdas. Uh, I think the color is called like Soul Crystal Red, or something like that. Like that's a candy pearl paint job where they do. I think they do like sort of this like goldish metallic for the base coat, and then they do red candy on top of that, and it's just this really nice. It's just really nice color, and doing that candy pearl paint job, it gives it this like really nice sort of like depth of color that's a little sparkly, and you just can't get that effect with like any other type of paint. It's really I think it's like one of the best looking just solid color paint jobs you can possibly have, in my opinion. It just looks so good. But it is a lot of work, and you have to be meticulous about everything. Especially the way I'm doing it here. You do your black base coat, and then you'll do a red solid pearl on top of that, which is supposed to go over. You can either do it over a black base coat, or you can do like a color matched base coat. It's custom paint. You can do a lot of things, but and obviously the color of the pearl, kind of how light or sparkly or anything, that's all going to change the end effect you get. And the one I'm going to go ahead and be using on these ones, it's the atomic red pearl from Did Spade. I feel like it gives this nice, like on its own, it doesn't, just over a black base, I don't think it looks that great. It looks a little washed out, and it doesn't look super saturated. Like, it looks a little undersaturated, honestly. But it's a finer pearl. Um, like the actual particle size of the pigment is pretty much, like it says, basically as fine as like pearl pigments come. So you can't really, it's harder to see like the individual like flakes of paint. You get more of like a solid color effect out of it. Whereas like if you have a bigger pigment size, it'll look a little more flaky. Like you'll see kind of more distance. You'll be able to kind of recognize the individual pigment like particles of the pearl pigment. And it just all comes down to like what you want your final look. You want your paint to look like in the end. And you see, uh, this is my big bin of like of pigments. I have so many of these. It's just nice to have a ton of colors. I use these for resin too. Um, Super versatile, and they're not very expensive. I mean, the super shifting pearls, they're pretty expensive. You're gonna pay like $35 for 5 grams, but that 5 grams is gonna last you a long time. You can get a ton of mileage out of that. But all the other like solid pearls, like the atomic red pearl, it's like $3 for 5 grams, and you can do a lot. You get a lot out of 5 grams. So, uh, and that's like, this is a high quality pigment. A lot of pigments, you'll get from like other places, especially if you just buy some like generic, whatever pigment. It might not be that great, very good quality, but I find like all the Did Spade ones that I get, it's just they're all really high quality. It's a they just have good stuff there, which is nice. So I'm gonna mix up my paint uh, for my red pearl, and you get your loose pigment, and then I'm using Intercoat Clear, which is basically, it's like it's Campo's product that they're you can use it for a bunch of stuff. It's pretty versatile. It's basically just a one part. It's just a clear, sort of carrier clear, or also you can be used as like a blending clear. But we don't really have to worry about that. That's more like an automotive refinishing sort of thing, where they'll use that clear to, if they're repairing some damage, they're just respraying a single panel. They'll spray this clear, and it helps kind of blend the different colors. I mean, between the unrepaired area and the repaired area. So it'll kind of like help blend that color and make it look more natural. Because color matching, that's a thing. I mean, colors are very tricky. You can mix up two identical. I mean, you could spray a paint one day and then go back the next day, and even though you try and mix it the same exact way, it might come out like it might look a little bit different, and that's like a big thing in the automotive refinishing world. Is trying to get the best color matches possible and just making it look good. So two spots on your car just don't look different. So that's like one use of this stuff. But I'm using it as a carrier clear for like pearl pigments and candies, where you just mix your pigment into this stuff. You generally, it's also like the black base coat. It's a 1-to-1. It's reduced 1-to-1. So you'll do, however much clear, like however much of the that inner coat clear that you want, and then you'll put an equal part of reducer in it. But the way I'm doing it, the way they actually kind of recommend mixing these things is measure out your reducer first, and then put in your pigment, mix it up, and then put in your clear after that. Because the clear is a little bit, it's pretty, it's thicker, and the reducer, it's a really powerful solvent. It's going to break up like any sort of clumps or sort of anything most of the time that's in there, and it'll just come out a little bit better. So you'll do that, and then of course you want to strain your paint cup. And here again, I'm using, I believe, I'm 1.5 turns in on my fluid, and same fan settings, 25 psi. And I'm going to be doing 2 coats on this. I put in, I believe, I put in a little more pigment than is typically kind of like recommended. That's because I just wanted to get good coverage in a couple coats. And I'm not really too concerned about if there's going to be like any sort of modeling or anything. I'm not going to be doing a drop coat, which I'll talk about later when I do the when we watch um, the sections where I'll spray the super shifting, like the color shifting pearls. I'll be doing drop coats on these, but with this one, because I'm doing a candy over it, and it's such a fine like particle size. I don't really need to do a drop coat on this one, and I'm just going for good coverage. So I just eyeball. The manufacturers will kind of recommend how much pigment to put in to mix into your paint, but this stuff's so cheap. Uh, I kind of just eyeball it. It's like whatever. You probably use more pigment than I actually need to, but it works. Not really a big deal. Stuff's pretty cheap anyways, so I don't really mind. I'll just get some on the end of my like popsicle stick, mixing stick, and I'll just dump it in, and I'll kind of just eyeball it. You don't need like that much. Like a little bit goes a long way, but with paint. But yeah, kind of just how it is. Yeah, so I think, yeah, this is my second coat right here. I'm getting already pretty good coverage. You can see it's like, if you look at this color, it's not super red. It's like a little washed out, a little desaturated, not super vibrant red. And our candy is going to be like fixing that. That's why we have our candy, and that's why we're using this particular pearl. I did one of these, a couple weeks ago where I used a different pearl that's it's a little more red, a little more vibrant, a little darker, and it just came out. So kind of, it came out definitely darker for sure, and a little less. I feel like it needed a little more. It needed light to look really good, but uh, this color, the way I'm doing it with the atomic red pearl as the base, um, I feel like it looks really. It looks better. It looks really good, kind of like no matter what the lighting condition is. Um, it can be like kind of poor lighting and it'll still look really good. But the other one, it needed good lighting to really see good color through it. And that's just something I kind of have to think about, and kind of mixing colors together, um, and all that is something you gain with experience. So uh, you just try different things and you see what works well and what you like, and at the end of the day, it's custom paint. You can do whatever you want, and um, do whatever you like feel like looks good, and yeah. So right here, I believe I'm going to do going to be mixing up my candy. And generally, I'm giving about 10 minutes in between each coat, just so it can, you want to let your paint dry in between coats for this particular product. Generally, about 10 minutes flash off is what's perfect. You can cut a little closer if you want, but sometimes you might have a little bit of issues down the line, um, especially these urethanes. They like to shrink a lot. Um, and if they're not like completely dried out by the time you put on your next uh, if they're not dried out enough kind of by the time you put in your next layer, you might have some issues where in a week or two or something like that, you might have the paint might kind of like shrink down a little bit more than you want, and it doesn't usually cause any issues, but I did this one controller um, that I uh, for main stage, and when I was prepping for main stage, that it was super shifting pearl. I use the Solace. It's kind of like a purpley color shift. It looks really cool, but um, yeah, I think I went a little bit too fast on that one, and maybe I didn't sand the logo down quite enough, but uh, for some reason, like a week after I painted and clear coated it, you could see the all the paint kind of shrunk down a little bit, and you could see a very faint outline of where the original logo was, and that's kind of weird. And I think that's just because of like shrinkage, and maybe I put on those coats of paint a little bit too wet and a little bit too close together, and so they just took a little bit longer to kind of shrink down. And somebody still, other than that, like that shell was pretty much perfect. And somebody actually was like, "That's pretty cool," and they bought it anyway. So it worked out, but it's just something you want to think about, and uh, be considerate of when uh, you're painting using these like solvent based paints, because they do shrink a bit more. And right there, I just mixed up my candy. Same process basically as the pearl pigment. The candies I'm using right here, I got them from Did Spade as well. Um, there are some other candies that I use because Did Spade, they don't have like a big color selection. They just have some basic, they have their like red, yellow, green, black, blue. Um, that's pretty much it. They don't have purple or pink or some other kind of like, they only have one shade of yellow, which is like a brighter, sort of a little more blue sided yellow. And kind of the other yellow that's more common is it's more of like a red sided yellow, and it's a little more gold. And then the blue sided one is a little more green. Um, and yeah, these candies, they're very concentrated. You only need a little bit of this stuff, and you'll get a very strong candy. And when you're mixing up these candies, if you put in too much of that concentrate, then you're gonna really strong candy. Um, it's gonna be very potent, and with these candies, um, you want to be patient. Like you don't want to put them on in like a single coat and get complete saturation, because you want to like, well, while you're doing these, you want to kind of watch, and after you're doing each coat, you want to kind of see where you're at, and like how much saturation, where your color is, and all that. But if you do it's super concentrated, you might end up only doing one coat, and it might be a little too dark or a little darker than you want it. And this is not uh, it's not ideal. Some cases, yeah, that's what you want, especially if you're doing like, if you're doing shading with like an airbrush and candy, you want it to be very concentrated, so you don't have to do a bunch of coats. You just do like one little pass, one or two little passes, and then you're gonna have some nice shading with your candy. Um, uh, but in this case, you want to. What I'm doing is I didn't put in too much, and I'm gonna be end up doing. I think I'm not sure. I might have only done two coats. Yeah, I think I only actually did two coats of candy on this one because it was a little bit. I was just happy with the color after two coats. Sometimes if you mix it up and it's a little bit less concentrated, you might want to be doing like three or four coats of candy. But um, yeah, in this instance, I was really happy with the color after two coats. I thought was looking really good, kind of where I wanted it. So I just did two coats here. I also remembered to do my cable plug here. Lots of times I haven't been doing like painting cable plugs just because it's a little extra work and I forget a lot of times. And I actually don't have, a lot of the shells I bought before. I'll just buy in like lots from other modders, and they don't come with cables. It's just the shell, and uh, so obviously more shells than cable plugs. But at the moment I have a bunch of cable plugs, so I'm going to be trying and painting more cable plugs with my controllers. But yeah, like in the past when I've done like a full build and I didn't have a cable plug, I'll just resin cast a cable plug in whatever color I want, and that works out just fine. But if you kind of want to go that extra mile, you do the cable plug. You paint the cable plug like an OEM cable plug, instead of resin casting one or just having like a mismatched cable plug with it. So yeah, there's all the candy on there. That's two coats, and it's a really nice color. It's not showing up. It's a little desaturated on camera, especially because these lights are a little. It's in like direct lighting. Um, they look a little tend to look a little desaturated when it's directly under that light, in a dark room, especially especially on camera. I don't have like I don't have a professional quality camera or anything, and so color accuracy is not, uh, not something I'm really, it's just something I have to do, just have to deal with in this instance. Like if you want really good color accuracy, you're gonna have to buy a, pretty expensive camera, uh, and you know, that's just how it is. So here I am. This is the next day. Um, and also forgot to film me masking up and doing the stencil, putting the stencil material on here. But yeah, I'm about to do the stencil on this red candy pearl one, which is and I'm using this stencil material called FBS Gold Mask. It's my first time using this stuff. It's like pro grade, really expensive, uh, just really good stuff. Um, and I got really good results. It's really high quality. I kind of recommend anybody use this stuff. It's really good. It's very thin. So I noticed like one of the issues I was having when I was using just that blue vinyl, kind of generic, whatever, Orcal 631, I think, is what most people use. You know, there's some like other brands that basically make the same exact thing, but that Orcal 631, it's a little thicker and it doesn't adhere very well and sort of bend around corners sometimes. And especially like when you're doing a stencil, if you don't want to, you want to get you want to put as little as you want to put as little paint as possible on to and get full coverage while you're doing a stencil. Because if you put too much on, sort of that like paint buildup will kind of build up the sides of your stencil, and it'll leave this sort of like edge that you can like very noticeable edge that you can't get rid of easily. So you really want your stencil material to be as thin as possible, and you want to put on as little paint as possible in order to not get that. And here I did this stencil came out extremely well. I think it's probably the best stencil I've ever done. And I'm just mixing up some. This is the Mini Frost Pearl from Did very fine, like silver pearl. And I have my whole thing masked up, and I have my stencil on there. And I messed up while I was doing the scaling on this logo. I've done these a few times before, and I've got the scaling like perfectly. And I don't know. I just couldn't find. I think I accidentally deleted my old file, and so I remade this, and I just messed up the scaling when I was doing it. I think I just measured wrong when I was measuring the logo, the OEM logo. So it's a little bigger than stock, but I actually put out a little Twitter post where I was like, "Oh man, this is like the best stencil I've done," but it came out too big. I messed up the scaling on it, but a bunch of people were like, "Wow, I really actually like kind of like the bigger logo." I think it looks a little more. I think it looks a little more sort of like powerful. It's as if like the OEM logo was like in bold, sort of. Um, um, yeah, I think it. I don't know. I kind of like it. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll do. I still think like the OEM sizing is kind of where what you want to do, but it still looks good. And not like a big deal. I mean, the end product turned out really well, anyways. But yeah, so I'm just going on. I'm doing pretty light layers, and I'm using my Iwata LPH50. This is what I used to use as a base coat gun. It's very small. It's like a 0.6 millimeter or something, and the fan on it's really small. And I feel like my Segola, it's just a little too big to do a small stencil like this. A little too clunky. Be using too much paint, and this thing is like perfect for doing little stencils like this. It's kind of what I use it for now. Anything where I need a lot more precision. Um, but yeah, I'm just using my LPH50, and I'm just doing pretty light layers, and then I'm really paying very close attention to my coverage in between each layer and seeing where I'm at, because I really want to put on as little paint as possible and still get full coverage without any of that base coat showing through it. And then I'm just blowing on it with air because it's a pretty small area for my spray gun, which is what you see me doing right here. You just pull the trigger in until air comes out, but you don't pull it past where the point where fluid comes out, where it actually like pulls the needle back and lets fluid through that through the tip. And now I'm just checking with my. I was just checking there on something you can do where if you have masking, you can kind of dab at it with your thumb and see like if it's wet or that sort of thing. And yeah, just keep just blowing on it. And that was the last coat. And now I'm going to unmask it here. Wearing gloves, you really want to make sure you don't get any sort of like contaminants on your shell, on your base coat. Because you might have like you'll get like fish eyes and stuff on your clear coat, and it's going to cause issues, and you don't want that. So I'm just wearing gloves basically anytime after I prep this thing. After I yeah, just trying not to touch it whatsoever. Keep it as clean as possible, even though it's a little clunky wearing gloves. It's, harder to like peel off tape and stuff, but it's what you got to do. Um, and the masking tape you use too makes a big difference. I used like frog tape, like delicate surface frog tape, for a while, and that stuff it just doesn't stick down very well. I felt like you really want a high quality automotive masking tape, and this is a 3M. This is like 3M's automotive masking tape, and this stuff is like the best masking tape you can get for this purpose. It sticks down really well, and it never pulls up paint ever, as long as your base coat is dry enough. So that's why I waited, till the next day to mask and stencil this thing. Because if you do, even if you wait like a couple hours, you think the paint's dry, it's still like a little delicate, and you might have some issues where you put on your masking tape and your stencil and all that, and if your base coat isn't really cured enough and dry enough, that your masking tape and stuff, it might pull up a little paint, or it might leave some marks behind, and you're gonna have some defects in your finished product. You really don't want that, and so yeah, that's what I'm doing here. You really want to be like as thorough as possible, and you don't want to get any. You want to make sure all your edges are really thoroughly masked off, and so you don't get any fresh paint onto your base coat, which is, and because then doesn't look good. And I think some of that might have. I'm not sure what happened here, but some sort of little like overspray or a little dusting of paint got into that little area right to the left of that masking. But it just like rubbed off. Like I just rubbed my finger over this at the end, and you'll see in like a minute or two, and it just came off. So I don't know what happened there, but I guess it worked out. But and here I'm just peeling off the logo. Kind of want to go on an angle, peel off slowly, make sure you get it off cleanly and doesn't peel up any paint. Um, this is about an hour after I finished painting the logo. You don't need to wait that long, but if you do it too soon, you're gonna have issues with paint pulling up with when you take off the stencil material, which really not a good thing. So I peeled that thing off, and there's still the parts left, like the center part of the O and the B and the D. Those needed to get taken off, and I go in with an X-Acto knife here, and I kind of it's a really good condition, basically almost brand new blade, and I just lift off a very corner, and I take my tweezers, and I'll go in and I'll get it off, and I'll just try and not damage that paint at all, because it's it's a base coat, it's pretty delicate, um, and you can see my it's a camera strapped to my head. Sometimes the angling is not perfect, but I guess it's limitations. So apologies for the slightly out of frame camera work right here, but it's kind of just something you have to deal with sometimes. Hard to hard to do anything about that after the fact because you can't actually see the can't actually see the display, I guess the screen on the camera when it's strapped to your head. So yeah, I feel like this is kind of this is the best way I've found of taking off, getting stencil material off there without damaging paint. You pry up a little edge and then take my tweezers and then peel it off. And this new masking material is like amazing. It worked so well. I'd highly recommend this stuff to anybody. It's expensive, but I feel like you got to get the best tools for the job. Like I mean, you can use cheaper stuff, but it's a lot harder to get good results. All right, so yeah, you can see there. Yeah, the logo is definitely a little big, and I was like, Man, kind of sucks, but whatever. Anyways, here I am. I'm gonna mix up my elevation color shift. Same process as the candies and that red base, that red pearl I used. Mixing up mixing up a little bit more clear because I am going to be doing, I believe, 2 coats and then 1 drop coat with this stuff. Um, and so I think I mixed up around like 70 or 80 milliliters of paint for this. That is the disadvantage of using like spray gun, like full, spray guns. Even though the guns I use, they're mini guns, so they're even smaller than full size spray guns. But because it's a 1 millimeter nozzle size. Unfortunately, they just like don't make these mini spray guns with like really small. Like some of these, they just don't make them with anything smaller than like 0.8 millimeter nozzles, and which kind of sucks. But um, yeah, it is what it is. Because they're not meant to be doing like these weren't really marketed as tools for painting controllers and stuff that's really small like this. Um, so yeah, this is what a white base pearl kind of looks like. It's kind of like cloudy, but you can kind of see the that sort of effect you're getting through it. It's pretty cool. Mixing up paint is always looks really cool when you're like actually mixing it up and you can see it all swirling around. It's pretty neat. But yeah, the I'm going to be doing the this is the elevation color shift again. Um, I'm doing it on one of these Xbox controllers. And weight based pearls are tricky. There's kind of like 2 different types of pigments. There's like a solid pigment where like the particle itself is the color. Um, like you'll look at the particle and it looks kind of basically like what you're going to be spraying as the final product. But with these white based pearls, they always go. They'll generally always go over like a black base, or well, I take back. That's not correct. They're more versatile than the like solid pearls, because you can spray them over like different colored bases. Like you don't have to just spray them over a color match base or a black base. Um, you can spray this one. It's like a green to blue, uh, like color. Color shifting pearl, but you can spray this over like a red base or something, like any color base you want, and you get this really cool like shimmer effect out of it, like color shifting shimmer effect, which you don't get out of. You can't get that effect out of like a solid pearl, like that, um, which is pretty neat. But I'm doing these over black base because I want to get that, the color there. I want to get all the color uh, from the pearl pigment itself. So this will go over a black base, and because it's white based, the particle itself is like it's transparent, or it's mostly transparent. Um, but the catches with these pigments is that if you put on too much of it, if you put on too much paint, then it'll kind of cloud up and it'll look foggy. The paint will look foggy. So you have to be really careful to not put on too much, but also get good coverage out of it. Um, and it's pretty tricky. That's kind of the limitation of these white based pigments. Like the other super shifting pearl I'm doing, that's a solid pigment, and you can put on however much you want and get perfect coverage out of it, and not worry about it fogging up or anything. But this stuff, you put on just like a little bit too much, and it'll look a little foggy. So it's pretty tricky. You just have to be really pay attention, and it makes it harder to do like a drop coat with this stuff because the purpose of a drop coat um, is to make that pearl just look, get rid of any like modeling and make it just look, the application look super even and consistent throughout the entire thing. which is an issue that you can have with like pearl pigments. And a drop coat is essentially where you'll on the very last coat you do, you'll drop your pressure by about 5 to 10 pounds, however much you're feeling like. I think I went from 25 when I did this one to I think I went down to like 18, like 17 or 18 psi, and then you're also gonna increase your distance from that you're actually spraying the pigment, the paint at. Um, so you like increase your distance from it, from the surface, and then you drop your pressure, so you don't get dry spray. Because if you just increase your distance, but you don't decrease your pressure, you'll get kind of like dry spray on the surface of your paint, which yeah, not something you want. And that's kind of why you do a drop coat, and it's especially important with these. Um, with some pearls, it doesn't feel like you don't really need to do a drop coat. Like I didn't do one on that the red pearl I did earlier, just because I didn't feel like I really need to do one. But with these ones, I feel like you do need to do a drop coat, especially if it's like a bigger pigment size. You definitely should be doing a drop coat. Um, but that's something like you got to gauge for yourself, like while you're painting it. Um, you just gotta be constantly paying attention, seeing where you're at, seeing how the paint's like laying down. And then you can make those decisions about like what you want to do, if you want to like skip a step, or you want to do add in a drop coat when you, or something like that. And uh, that's something you only do with like metallics and pearl pigments. You don't need to do it. You'd never do a drop coat with like a solid color, like just a solid color paint. Just not something you have to do, or a candy. It's just applies to like metallics and pearl pigments. But yeah, I like this. The color on this elevation pearl is pretty nice, but I find it fogs up really easily if you put on too much. So it's a little tricky. I feel like I like a really even like pearl pigment distribution personally. Some people like to see a little bit of space and see those individual particles, but it's not really my thing. Um, I like it to be super even, get that like sort of like mirror chrome sort of look, as someone describe it. Um, and if you want to get that look, um, you really need an absolutely even distribution, and so that's why you really need to do a like drop coat. But with these white base pearls, again, like especially this one in particular, it's harder to get that super even look. So this one actually went down really well. I got it really even. It's not quite as you can see like a little bit more space in between the particles than the other one I did, just because I could go a little heavier on the paint with the other color shift I did later in this. After this, we'll see while I'm doing that one. Yeah, so there we go. It's a pretty nice color. It's just not greens just don't show up well on camera for some reason. Not well, not really sure why. I'm just going outside and kind of like checking the color and seeing where I'm at. And I think after this, I decided, yeah, I do want to do a drop coat. This was after 2 coats, so I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna let this coat dry, and then yeah, I'm just gonna check. Also, just checking how much paint I have left here. If I need to mix up more for drop coat, and I did have enough for a drop coat there, so that worked out. And yeah, we're gonna just check. We're gonna drop our pressure right here. Down from 25 to about like 17 or 18. And then I'm gonna also you want to wind out your fluid. You want to when you're doing drop coat. You want to make sure you want to put out a little bit more fluid than you are when you're doing a regular base coat. At least with my Segola here. Every spray gun's be a little different. I felt like I was getting like a little bit of dry spray here, but it worked out in the end. The next one I did after that, this when I did my drop coat, I wound up my fluid even more, and I didn't have that issue. But um, this was an issue. Like it wasn't an issue once I clear coated these. Like or even after the drop coat, I feel like I don't know. There wasn't really dry spray. So I don't know. Maybe I just felt like when I was putting it down, that's kind of I wasn't getting that really nice like kind of like wet coat um, that I normally kind of go for. Really, but yeah, I don't know. I digress. Anyways, yeah, just doing my drop coat here, and I'm pretty happy with that. Just looked really nice at the end. Um, got a really nice even distribution of that pigment, and with really like no modeling or anything, and it just worked well. So here we're going to do the assassin super shift pigment. I mean, pretty much same process, but as the elevation. Actually, yeah, exact same process, except I was a little bit more aggressive on my drop coat just because I didn't have to worry about, um, I'd have to worry about it fogging up because it's a solid pro pigment, not a white based. Yeah, just take some, dump it in. It works. And we're just put our inner coat in there, mix it up, strain it, get to painting. This was actually this assassin super shift pigment. It was actually the first color shift I ever did. I think I did it back in like June or something, and uh, yeah, it was the first one I ever did. Came out really well. These are always color shifts. They're just super cool. Some colors I like a little bit better than others, but um, I don't know. This is a really nice color. The shift's a little bit more subtle. It goes from this like really kind of like chocolatey purple, really like dark chocolatey purple to kind of like orangish yellow sheen. I don't know. It's really cool. I really like this pigment a lot. This color. You can see my spray gun cup's a little dirty, but it's just the outside. I'll make sure. I really try and get when I'm cleaning my guns in between colors. I really try and get uh, the insides, the inside of the cup, and all that. I'll try to get it as clean as possible, because you don't want to get any like contaminants or any of those leftover metallic particles from any previous colors mixed in there, because they'll come out as kind of like specks of dust. See, there's the first kind of drop of. It's my first coat. It's laying down really nicely. These solvent-based paints they're really nice. You can be kind of aggressive with them, and they're just easy to work with. Some of their like water-based paints, like the Createx ones, um, I don't know. Those are very popular just because they're easy to, you can buy small quantities, and a lot of art stores carry Createx. But honestly, I don't know. It just doesn't. I'm just not a fan. It doesn't adhere as well. It's a lot easier to get like runs and stuff with it. I feel like the coverage just isn't as good too, and uh, I just feel like the quality of the pigments they use just isn't as good as like this Tamco and like Did Spade stuff. So that's my thoughts about Createx paints. They're good if you want to, if you just need to do like a solid color or something, and you don't want to buy a big batch of like big. You don't want to spend like $50 to $100 on like a single color paint. Like that's the issue with urethanes. They're expensive and they don't sell them in small quantities. Like you have to buy a quart of paint just to get like a single solid color sometimes, and it sucks. And those paints are expensive. Like a lot of colors, you're gonna pay like $100 for a quart, uh, and it's especially if you're getting like good quality paint. And it could be if you're especially going for like some of the really like more expensive brands, you be paying like $150 dollars for like a single quart of a solid color paint, and that's just so expensive, especially for like controller stuff where you know, you're only using like 50 milliliters at a time, 50, 60 milliliters of paint. Um, and that's a lot of money. Not worth the investment for just a single color that you can't, like, you just have that color. And it kind of sucks, but again, these urethanes they're used for like automotive refinishing and stuff. So that's why they don't sell them in small quantities because there's not a lot of people that just paint that use this stuff just to paint like a single controller here and there. They're used for like entire motorcycles or like painting like entire car where you're using like that entire quart of paint at one time. So it's understandable that's the way it is, but you gotta pick and choose your battles. You want to save some money, and that's why like I don't have any of these. The only urethanes that I buy, I have like black and white. I have quarts of black and white, which are cheaper than the colors. They're like $50 to $60 for black and white, and they're just really high quality and the last ton of paint lasts forever. And I use those colors just like all the time too. Anyways, so that works out. That's why I have like the black and white, and I also have like my Intergo clear, which I use for like all my pigments and candies and stuff. Great stuff. Super versatile. And it's also not very expensive. It's only like, yeah, you're only paying like 50, $60 for that quart of paint. And um, it lasts a while. You get a lot of mileage out of it for the price, for sure. Obviously, your clear coats, they're especially good quality paint is they're not cheap. I mean, the clear coat I'm using it's Tamco 9500, which is it's a 50% solids clear, which is it's a high solids clear. There's some that are little uh, that are higher solids than that, but those aren't used that much. Um, those are a little even more expensive. They're just super. That's like the best of the best. They're very thick. I don't think you really need, especially for controllers. I like this the clear coat I use, which is the Tamco's 9500. It's a 30-minute like catalyzed clear coat, so it cures. Uh, it's really nice because it cures. You can handle it in 30 minutes after you spray it, which is awesome. It's great for workflow, and it's also really good for keeping dust out of your paint. Um, so that's really because I don't have like a professional quality spray booth or anything here. I just have my little dinky shed that I built, uh, and there's dust in this thing. Like, you know, um, wind can blow in from the outside, carry some dust in, and like, yeah, I don't have like professional quality clean room really to paint this stuff in. So uh, I found my issues with dust, like especially when I was using those like traditional clear coats where you know they'd cure it, they'd be handleable in like 6 hours. Those, yeah, I'd like get dust would like fly in and they'd like stick in the top of the clear. But with this stuff, I don't have like any of those issues just because it cures so fast. There's not enough time for dust to fly around the room and just like land on the controllers, which is nice. Big plus. I was like, while I was spraying these things, I kind of tried some various methods of like spray patterns of like how I move my gun and get the paint on there. Um, Whereas like just because I've never painted an Xbox controller before, but like with GameCube controllers, I do like the same exact movements every single time. Just because I feel like that's the best way to I've kind of figured out what works best for me or what like process to use while painting them because I've just painted like a ton of GameCube controllers. Also, on the topic of paint, you don't want to cheap out on paint. I mean, you want to use really good, high quality stuff if you want to get a good result. Um, it's just when you buy better paint, it's easier to work with. It's just better. Your colors are going to be a little more vibrant. Things are just gonna You're gonna get better coverage. Your stencils are gonna come out better because you don't have to put on as much paint. Um, and it's just a better experience overall. Just highly recommend. So right here, um, yeah, about to clear coat all this stuff, and I only got my battery on my camera died after like partway about halfway through this first coat of clear coat. So that's all the footage we have. But um, yeah, mixing up about 250 milliliters of clear coat for all of these, and I'm going to be doing. I did 2 coats total of this, and I had a little bit of extra clear coat, and you can see I changed spray guns too, and I had 2 speeds. I have 2 speeds of hardener um, for my clear coat. It's 2-part clear coat where you have your first part, which and then you have your hardener, and I have fast hardener, and I also have medium hardener. Medium is used for like 70 to 80 degree weather, 70 to like 85 degree weather, and fast is like anything below that. And when I was doing this, it was about like 72 degrees out. So I use my medium hardener with it, and just mixing it up right here. This clear it's a 4-to-1 ratio, so you do your four parts of your main 9500, and then you do 1 part of hardener. So essentially, you have 5 total parts. And kind of the way I approach my math when I'm doing this is I'll be like, okay, so 125 milliliters. Okay, you have 4 parts of 25 milliliters each of your part A, and then if you have 4 of those, you get 100 milliliters, and then you'll 1/4 of 100, it's 25, and you get 125 total milliliters out of that. So 100 milliliters of your part A, and then 25 of your part B, your hardener, and then I just doubled that. So 200 milliliters of part A, and then 50 milliliters of part B, and that's it. Now this is the second time I've clear coated with my DV1S, and this thing, great finish. The fan is like absolutely huge on it, which it's like actually way too big. And honestly, I need to get a different, I need to get a smaller like fluid nozzle for it, but it's expensive. Like it's not cheap. It's like $100 for another fluid nozzle. So uh, maybe I'll get one. Uh, It'll be a little easier I'll have a smaller fan, use a little less clear coat, uh, but and have less overspray in the booth while I'm doing this, or in the shed. But yeah. Also, the other thing I noticed about like the cup on this thing is a lot smaller. The cup on the Segola is like, I think it's like a 300 milliliter cup, but this is like a 125 milliliter cup. So I have to fill up I have to um, and also like the cup like tilts back a lot, and just the way this sits in my spray gun holder, it's kind of hard to get the paint in the cup. I can't just like set it on the holder and put my strainer in there, because the strainer will just like fall back because the cup is angled back so much. So I kind of had to like hold it by the cup upright, and then like kind of hold the strainer on there with my finger, like my hands, my hand that was also holding the cup, and then also then pour my paint through the strainer into the cup. So yeah, I believe I mixed up the paint there, and I went and changed it to my paint suit and got my goggles on and everything. And here, just plugging in my air hose because I had changed spray guns. And I'm actually clear coating at 40 psi with this thing, which is really it's really high, but it's like perfect for the spray gun. And I went in about for my first coat, I went in um, 3/4 of a turn on my fluid, and I went in a decent bit on my fan just because the fan on this thing is so freaking big. It's like too big, honestly. You want it. It's not quite wet enough, the fan. So I turned in my fan a decent bit, so it's like the fan itself was like it has a smaller spray pattern, which also but all that paint was just means the fan smaller, but also a little bit wetter at the same time. So here I am doing my first coat. I don't because I'm doing two coats. I'm doing kind of like a medium wet first coat, and then I'm trying to do like a really nice like full coat, full float coat on the second coat I'm doing. But also yeah, my camera died, so you only get like part of my first coat here. You can also see you have to be really careful when you're clear coating, especially with these spray guns when you're doing the those vertical parts and like the insides of the handles and those C-stick and D-pad bubbles. If you do too much paint, if you put on too much paint there, you're going to get runs really easily because it's a straight vertical surface, and that stuff is just going to run straight down. But when you're doing, and it's going to pull at the edge if you do too much. But when you're doing like a flat surface, you can put on more paint and not worry about running at all, and it's easier to get a really nice flat surface or flat finish on your clear coat. You can see here, I'm really like looking at when I'm clear coating. I'm kind of really looking at how the paint's laying down, and I'm trying to get it really nice and even, especially on that first coat. The first coat's really important. A lot of people recommend doing like a dust coat on your first coat, but I really don't. I've like tried that, and I feel like I get better results doing this, where I just try and get my every coat I do, I'll try and get as much clear coat on there as possible without having it run or like solvent pop. Because if you put on like too much clear coat, there's so many solvents in this thing and it does harden. So if you put on too much, you can get like fogging in your clear coat. So that's it. This is the finished. These are all we saw these at the start of the video, but it's finished product. These are pretty good. Like there's a little bit of like very fine orange peel on some areas, but it's like really good. And there's like no dust in any of these. There's like one little clear coat nib on that back shell, which I don't know, it's hard to see from the video, but you just slice that off with a razor blade and then just polish it up a little bit. And these all came out like really well. Some really cool colors. And with that, I'm just gonna let you enjoy the rest of the video. And thanks again for, I guess, watching. I'm going to be making some more content. Try and make some more of these videos, some guides, like painting guides and stuff. But yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed.